brain, the skeleton brain. The scientific name is an incredibly childish behaviour. Tonight, all right, it's good. We've got some serious stuff to talk about. Tonight we're looking at more ape-like behaviour in the house and seeing just how rebellious our housemates are this year. But first, exclusive news fans, that's you. Yes. Exclusive news on this week's nominations. Over the weekend, housemates paired up with their new best friends, their bezzers, and today they had to nominate together in the diary room as pairs. What the housemates didn't know was that by nominating a housemate, they were automatically nominating that housemate's best friend as well. Can I get a woo? Delayed reaction, but it was there in the end. Big Brother announced the results to the house earlier on. Here's how they took the news.
This week, the housemates with the most nominations will face the public vote with their best friends. The best friends nominated for eviction are Imogen and Susie.
Shit. Oh dear.
Michael and Spiral.
He's a minor.
Richard and Pete.
On my birthday.
Pete and Richard.
On your birthday.
Some cruel bastard. On my birthday. Some cruel bastard.
Oh dear.
Birthday.
That's it.
Is that it?
One pair of best friends will leave the house
One pair.
in a double eviction on Friday.
Come on, guys.
Oh, we got some gasps. There was some sort of blood revenge threatened when Pete was up there. I got a gasp of, not my Pete. On Friday, it was going to be a double eviction, either Imogen and Susie, Michael and Spiral, or Pete and Richard. Oh, they hate that Pete. We'll go. Voting numbers are coming up at the end of the show, and this week you're voting for the pair you want to save. Back to tonight. You may remember 7 weeks ago we talked about how the housemates are acting like a colony of apes. Well, they still are. And back to discuss how the process of evolution has simply passed them by is the psychologist other psychologists call Mom. Judy James. Hello, Judy. It's nice to have you with us again. Judy, when you came on the show a few weeks ago, you highlighted what you call the housemates' simian behaviour. Remind us of similarities between the housemates and the simian colonies.
Well, we're not called the naked ape for nothing.
Right.
And all human behaviour in some way or another replicates the simian behaviour. However, I mean, the housemates, because of the circumstances and the way that they've evolved, completely fit an ape colony. One of it is the proximity. They're in captivity, so they've kind of created this colony life. Then you've got the alpha profiles that are absolutely exact.
The alpha males and alpha females.
Alpha males, alpha females. You've had the new housemates, and that's created what looks like chaos. But in actual fact, it still completely fits the right plan.
OK, last time we spoke to you about simian behaviour, you said Richard was the alpha male and Leah the alpha female. Why was that?
The alpha male is very much the most powerful, highest status ape in the colony, and that's very much Richard's role. They do that usually through looking strong, and he's still quite muscular, but also being very much the sexual ape in the house, so they have their pick of the other mates. And he was like that. Caesar took over for a little while, but then Richard took over, and he's probably had that role now for a long time.
OK.
The alpha female does it more by food. They kind of keep the food and share the food out, if that sounds familiar.
Yes. No prizes for guessing who the alpha female is now.
Who might that be?
Now, since you...
and they're also the oldest female as well.
Since then, 4 new housemates have arrived. What impact has this had? I mean, has it had that much of an impact on the group?
It was like an invasion. I mean, in terms of ape behaviour, this is the most traumatic moment going on right now in the colony since the show started. They've had to reform. They look like an ape colony that's been in a battle.
Right.
Several of the alphas have been killed, in a way. They've been voted out. And now you've got the beleaguered alpha who's been in there a little bit too long, which is Richard, who's almost wounded, and people are beginning to want his role.
The weirdest thing is, though, that when the people first came in, obviously, like you do with the group, they made an effort So it's taken, what, about a week or so for them to bed down? Isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the signs started to show after a few days, but it's only now that we're really getting the backlash.
Okay. Is Richard the alpha male still under threat? If so, from whom?
Well, I don't know if anybody will be able to guess, but he's very much under threat right now by Michael. Michael in the house had kind of, in the small house, he had alpha male tendencies, but as you say, he sort of laid fallow for a little while here, but now he's attacking him in 4 ways. Sexually, which is very interesting, very complex tale going on there.
Explicitly I'd like to see.
He's doing it because he won't flirt with Richard. Now, flirting is very important in a male colony because it's a symbol of submission. So if I was a kind of female or male ape coming through the jungle and you were the alpha and I felt threatened by you...
You're going to be right here on my lap, right?
No, I would actually be bending over and pointing my bottom at you.
Which out of the two is the more preferable, if I'm honest with you.
But it wouldn't be a sexual invitation, it would just be a sign, please don't beat me up.
Oh.
So that's what flirting, that's why people flirt at work, in actual fact, as well.
Oh. OK, first one, sexual. What's the second one?
The second one that we've got is physical. He's not hugely aggressive, but he uses staring, shouting, lots of eye contact.
He's got the scariest stare in the world.
He has.
The next one.
The next one is very much the way that he is intellectual. You see him in conversations. I mean, Richard was always the cleverest one in the house. Now he kind of intellectualises the conversation and tries to outdo Richard on that one.
Yeah, OK, and lastly?
It's tribal, and he got Mikey on his side for this one. He used Mikey in an argument the other day to protect him. And that was very interesting, because Mikey and Richard are from the same original tribe, and he got them to split up on his behalf, and he's a new member of the tribe.
It's almost about like that kind of scorching, like, or just setting a time bomb in and leaving it. And...
Very much so,
OK.
yeah.
Let's have a look at the 4 ways you just talked about in how Michael is challenging Richard.
Richard, if you see me on Old Compton Street, walk on by, yeah? Listen, everyone, he has made me feel welcome in this house since day one.
Oh, whatever.
You have, Richard, you did.
Whatever.
You've made petty comments.
I've not made any petty
comments.
comments.
And I've been as pleasant as I can possibly be to you.
I think I am love. I think I am God.
God is in you.
Yeah, it's in you.
Okay.
It's in Glenn.
It's in everyone.
Mikey, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who called him a she then?
I did. I called him a she.
Well, he said specifically that he didn't like being called she because he wants to retain his masculinity. Do you know what I mean? He's a man.
Well, I didn't hear that.
He's a man, he's not a woman.
OK, so I'm buying that, but will he succeed?
He might do for 2 reasons. One is because he's got this very, very high-status body language that he uses, and he's used that on several occasions to beat Richard. You know, it might not be noticeable to the naked eye, but it's very, very strong stuff. The other thing is that he's got Aisling on his side, and he uses her very cleverly to fight Richard. OK,
let's take a look at some of the gesticulations you talked about. Pit-bearing, what's that?
Now, this is a strong symbol of power, and you can actually feel it coming off him there. I mean, you almost feel sorry for Richard. It's so much I've won, because he's displaying his delicate body parts, showing that he doesn't feel threatened by Richard at all.
And I found that quite uncomfortable to watch when that happened, only because, irrespective of whose side I was taking the argument, because Imogen was hugging him, and, you know, you can see Richard felt quite...
bullying by armpit, wasn't it?
Yeah. The next one's a headstand. Take a look at that. So this is when they were having their big set too, wasn't it? What's the showing?
He's doing what's called ignoring. I mean, again, he's showing that although you're having a go at me, I'm standing my head, I couldn't care less. I don't feel remotely threatened by you. And by ignoring people, we actually lower their status.
OK. And lastly, auto-contact gesture. What is that?
He does this monkey thing of patting himself on the head. And that's... he does it even more in a minute. Smack, smack, smack. And you see monkeys go around screaming when they're very excited or even when they've had a victory.
OK. That looks terrifying. That's a bad thing, right? You shouldn't be doing that. No one's saying you should do that.
I wouldn't recommend it. Maybe if your team's won or something, but, you know, you probably get beaten up. It's not good. It's not good.
Now, you talked about getting Aisling on the side. I want you to we're going to take a quick look at this clip, and then you're going to talk us through it.
And I said, I don't like calling me he and she. And he goes, oh, she's having a hissy fit. It's just too much. It fucks me off. Do you know what I mean? It's a tiny part of my life. It's a tiny part of my life.
You're so much more than just your fucking sexuality.
Yeah, of course I am.
I know that, babes.
Doesn't
I know
dominate
that.
my every sentence. I'm every friend. I'm every way to live my life. And I'm not at all ashamed of it. I'm not at all comfortable with it.
you're
If I was ashamed, I wouldn't be here.
I know. I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I'm gonna
Oh.
I'm soaking wet. Oh, so angry.
Right, very briefly, talk us through this, because to the naked eye, that's just, she feels quite sorry for him, gives him a hug, walks outside.
No. High 8 manipulation. He fights with Richard, he goes into the bathroom, he gets the ideal audience, he gets the hugs from Aisling, and then the most important thing, he kisses Aisling on the shoulder. And when he does that, he anoints her as alpha for that moment. He makes her feel powerful. And she storms out and sets about Richard for him.
We can even see Michael gesticulating like an ape, as you can see here. And then start. Look, there he is. And then this, watch.
The kiss.
What does that mean, that kiss? You just mean
That's what apes do to a stronger ape. And as I say, it made her feel powerful and protective. And she literally just walked straight up and set about Richard.
OK, let's talk very briefly about the alpha female. Obviously now it's Susie.
It totally is. Susie buy a packet of biscuits and a load of tea bags, definitely.
OK, let's take a look at Susie, the alpha female.
Guys, I'm going to really be miserable with everybody now. They have given us basic rations. We make tea. We don't make 1 cup. We ask if everyone wants tea. We're going to have to go through it every morning and say, this is what we're going to eat today, because otherwise we're going to have no food left. If we make tea, make sure you've got enough cups so you can squeeze 4 tea bags out, because we've only got a limited supply of tea bags. Hurry. Go and find out, Jane. It's my tea bag from ages ago.
I could do it for you.
No, darling. I will do it when I've dealt with Ash. Please, be a good boy.
She's had an amazing couple of weeks, hasn't she, Susie? All this has almost come from nowhere.
She's changed so much as well. It was the food rationing that did it. Once that happened, she turned into a tyrant. And she turned into Margaret Thatcher, actually, because she lowered her voice, at least an octave, and she's completely bullying everybody in there now.
OK, now Aisling would be the obvious contender, right?
No.
To maybe usurp her, no?
You don't get 2 alpha females fighting, because women are cleverer than that. But what's interesting, Aisling was sponsored to take over by Richard and Leah. But what she's doing now, she's sponsoring Jenny in exactly the same way through grooming her and sort of bringing her on. So Jenny's her little ape now.
OK.
Which is quite cute.
But how does this manifest itself in the task? Because these two are the two that are together, and as it turns out, they're not up for eviction this week.
This explained everything about why they paired off in the way they did. She chose her first, and she had to, because she's her little ape, and she's suffering from what's called weaning conflict. If she tries to get rid of her too soon, she screeches and screams like little ape, and grown-up apes often have to dangle them by one leg out of the tree to get rid of them. So that started the rest of it off. If she'd have paired up with Michael, we could have had war in there, because we'd have had alphas versus alphas.
OK, brilliant. Thank you very much, Judy James, everyone. Test time, everyone. We had a picture and handwriting... Oh, I was giving it a bit of that then, wasn't I? We had a picture and handwriting analyst study some of the sketches the housemates drew before entering the house. The analyst had no prior knowledge of our housemates, and the pictures were drawn anonymously. This is brilliant. From this picture... Extraordinary. I'm winning Wimbledon, and I'm getting a blowjob, and the woman's farting while she's giving me a blowjob. Our expert told us the artist was a poor listener, likes to exaggerate, can't or won't accept responsibility. Within the sketch, pictures themselves as the dominant feature, and this implies self-glorification. But which housemate is the artist? I will reveal all after the break. See you in 4. The show that gives, and on the odd occasion, likes to take as well. Before the break, we showed you this picture. Interesting, terrifying. We got a picture and handwriting analyst to study some sketches the housemates drew. He told us this artist was a poor listener, likes to exaggerate, can't or won't accept... That's not a clue. Accept responsibility. Within the sketch, pictures themselves as the dominant feature, which implies self-glorification. But which housemate was the artist? Hello, sir. Well, who do you reckon?
I have no idea.
You've no idea at all?
No.
Oh, come here, you. I feel like I've really scared you. Any idea at all?
Michael.
You think Michael? What's about?
Spiral.
Spiral. Hello. What do you think?
Mikey, I think.
You think Michael?
Mikey.
Mikey. Interesting. If I was to tell you, it's Glenn. There you go. I'm winning Wimbledon. Victoria Silverstead and Leah are giving me a mum. And they're doing a big fart on my black pudding. On Friday, you evicted Jane, one of the most rebellious housemates Big Brother has ever seen. Her and her giant gob sailed close to the wind on many, many occasions. But now she's out. Are there any rebels left? Here to reveal all is a rebel without a bad bone in his body. Psychologist Mark McDermott, everyone. Hi, Mark. Good to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
OK. Mark, your definition of rebelliousness?
Well, it's really wanting or feeling that you need to oppose a requirement that you perceive to be out there. So it might be taking a principled stand against something, it might be taking an unprincipled stand against something. And the upshot of this might be that you get some power and control, or you might make yourself a bit more distinctive.
OK, so in light of Big Brother, therefore, is the house a rebellious house this year?
Well, yes and no. It's not in the sense that the contestants have rebelled against Big Brother, but it's more so that they've rebelled against one another. They've all rubbed each other up the wrong way.
I suppose now, the show's so far down the line in terms of years that people kind of know the rules of Big Brother, and when they apply, they go, well, that's the way it's got to be. But so they're rebelling more against each other and the powers within the house, rather.
Yeah.
OK.
Yeah.
Now, you did tests for us when the housemates, before the housemates entered the house to determine who they thought they were, if they thought they were rebels or not. Can you explain these tests for us?
Well, it's actually one test that's composed of about 14 questionnaire items, and basically each item, the contestant has to imagine a scenario and say how they'd respond in relation to it, either in a rebellious or a conformist way.
We've got an example there. I mean, it's a fairly obvious one. Let's take a look at it. You've been treated badly by someone.
Yeah.
And you...
Are you unkind back?
Yeah.
Or do you just turn the other cheek and walk away?
Sure, and obviously the A would be the rebel. It's funny, though, I imagine that most people questioned probably think they are slightly more rebellious because there's a mystique to being a rebel that's slightly more rebellious than they actually are, right?
Yeah, there's a bit of kudos to it, isn't there? You know, there's a bit of social cachet to being a rebel, ever since James Dean and on, really.
Exactly. So what significant results can you glean from the test, then?
Well, interestingly, the housemates as a group are quite above average in terms of their rebellion as compared with, say, the general population.
Anyone in particular?
Well, yeah, you've got a group of people, I guess. Glyn scored surprisingly highly, as did Richard, Mikey, and notably Aisling.
OK. We know which housemate thinks they're the most rebellious, which is Aisling. But who is the biggest rebel and why?
Well, I think it's a bit of a surprising one, this one. I think Susie actually is perhaps the most rebellious.
Just stunned disbelief in the audience. Why so?
Well, we've got to remember it's rebellion in this house, and in a way, Susie doesn't really think she's a rebel, I think, but she's really refused to conform to the norms of the other housemates.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you look at the audition tapes, everyone says, oh, I'm like this and I'm like that, and I'm sure they are, but when they come into the house, because they know that with all these other people, they almost, I guess, pool that sovereignty. But she's taken that little bit of Kent with her, isn't she? And she always has a tea, and she always wears a lovely lingerie and stuff like that.
She's not really accommodated to the house. She's brought in, as you say, her bit of Kent. She's very boundaried. She takes the moral high ground on things, and she quietly says no when she doesn't want to take part.
I never thought I'd be saying this. Let's take a look at Susie the rebel in action.
I'd much prefer to be called sensible than silly. Let's put it that way.
I just cannot go around kissing people on the mouth like, oh, God, big snogs with... Oh.
Everyone's having massages apart from Susie.
Don't worry, I'll have plenty of massaging done when I leave here, thank you.
Come on, stay focused, guys. Stay focused.
Don't you think this is tediously boring? Oh, done enough of that one.
So are we seeing any other forms of rebellion in the house?
Well, I like to distinguish between two forms, basically what I call reactive and proactive rebellion. And the reactive kind is a kind of retaliatory, vengeful rebelliousness in response to some unreasonable or unsympathetic requirement that's imposed on you. So, for example, Aisling, when she was nominated, really didn't take very well to that, and she reacted against it and began to tell Leah and Nikki pretty much what she thought of them in no uncertain terms.
Let's take a look at that.
People upset me, I might start telling them about it.
Me.
Oh, shut your mouth. No, you shut yours. You're so boring. Boring. So boring. Bitch.
Oh, you better know yourself if you're talking about me, little girl.
It's not right. He's a fucking person, and he should have got what he bleeding worked for. And it's stupid.
That's what we baby.
Because you're saying it's Big Brother, I don't care who it is.
Don't shout.
I know what it is. I know what program it was. Because I want to shoot. Don't tell me what program it was.
Who are you shouting at?
Okay, that's reactive, yeah?
Yeah. So we saw Spiral being reactive there too to the whole situation in the house.
Perceived injustice, yeah. Okay, what about proactive? Talk us through that.
Well, that's the sort of rebellion that you actively pursue just for the sake of having some fun and some excitement. So maybe doing something shocking, breaking a rule proactively in order to have some fun. Maybe sometimes at the expense of others, though.
Okay, so it can border on bullying?
Yeah, it can, if you're not careful, it can kind of segue into that.
Okay, let's take a look at some examples.
Should we hide Susie duvet? Let's go and do it.
Yeah. Change him and Pete's draw. Or him and
Fuck off, Richard. Fuck off.
Kind of seeing the funny side to that, but like you said, they can border on bullying. But lastly, will a rebel win this year's Big Brother?
Well, I think the history of Big Brother shows that the rebels don't usually win. It's normally those that get on well with the other housemates, that don't habitually break rules. The ones that do tend to get evicted, as we've seen this week with Jane, for example.
So who's likely to win with that in mind?
Well, I'd put my money on Pete.
Okay,
He's
thank you
very
very
popular.
much. That's all we've got time for. Thank you very much, Mark, everyone. That's all for this week's Big Brain BBUK Tuesday to Friday. Voting numbers on the screen now. Take care, see you next week. Bye-bye. This week you are voting for which pair of best friends you want to keep. Imogen and Susie, Michael and Spiral, Pete and Richard face the public vote. The pair of best friends with the least votes will leave the house in a double eviction on Friday. Which pair stays, you decide. To save both Imogen and Susie, call 09911 32 33 21 or text pair 1 to 844 44. To save both Michael and Spiral, call 09911 32 33 22 or text pair 2 to 844 44. To save Pete and Richard, call 09911 32 33 23 or text pair 3 to 844 44. Remember, this week you are voting to save.